Hello and thanks for tuning in. This video is going to be about data collection, and if you have been through my PineScript Bootcamp series, or if you already have a foundation in PineScript, you should be able to follow along with this one fairly easily. It doesn't go too deep, but if you don't have a grasp on some basic concepts about how PineScript works or how to use PineScript, if this is your first time using PineScript, you might want to go through the PineScript Bootcamp series first before coming into this video, because we are going to go a little bit deeper. So that being said, this series this video is going to be really one of my favorite topics. This is what I use PineScript for primarily, and that is data collection. I like to use PineScript to write little code and to find out basically what the objective truth is regarding different claims that are frequently made on social media about trading and the markets. So this video is going to teach you kind of how to start investigating some of those claims, collecting data, so that you can determine for yourself whether what these people are saying or what you have maybe noticed and you suspect might be true. You can get objective data to help either refute or confirm that what you're seeing or what other people are saying is actually a real thing. Let's go ahead and get started. So for the purpose of this video, I wanted to pick something that is probably pretty common for people to have heard, a claim that people have probably heard, and it's fairly simple to investigate, because the idea here is that I'm just showing you kind of the basic tools that you can use in order to do data collection. So I'm going to start with this first video being something very simple. And this is a claim that has been made. I've heard it in a lot of different places, that the markets take the stairs up and they take the elevator down, right? So over time, you will see that allegedly, you'll see that price takes a long time to climb up and get to higher, and it usually, if it's going to dump, it goes down much faster than it goes up. So that is a pretty basic claim, and it's fairly easy to test, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So now that we have a clear testable concept, let's go ahead and dive into our code to make it happen and investigate. First thing we got to do, of course, is we want to name our script. So we're going to call this one stairs versus elevator. And we do want this to be an overlay. We do want to put this table directly on top of our bars on the chart. So let's go ahead and name our script, and we'll need to rename it to stairs versus elevator. Save that. Now, set up our defaults here. So we've got our declarations. We are probably not going to need any custom types or methods for this one. We are going to need some variables though. We are definitely going to need some core logic. And as usual, we will definitely need some visuals. However, we do not want a plot. The visual that we're going to be using for this one is going to be a table. So we're going to declare our table is going to be TBL, just for short, and we'll say table.new. This is the method for creating a new table, table.new. And you can see that we've got all these different parameters that we can set as we call this function. So where is it going to be? How many columns and rows is it going to have? What are the colors and widths and all that kind of stuff? We're going to use pretty much all these parameters, except for this last force overlay, because we have already up here said that we're going to be on an overlay. So that's just redundant. So position, let's do position dot. I'm going to keep mine on the bottom right. That's just where I like to put the tables for myself. Columns, we don't quite know how many columns we're going to use just yet, so I'll start with just 5. We can always change this later if we need to. And then rows, let's go with 10, just to be safe. You can always, again, change these values if we end up filling up all those columns or all those rows. For the background color, we want to specify a color. In this case, I'm going to just pull straight from the chart. Whatever the chart's background color is, I want the table to match that. So I'll say chart.bg color, and you see all these other parameters you can access under the chart variable or built in. So use background color. Then we've got the frame color. I'm going to do the same thing, except instead of using the background color, I want the chart, or I want the table to match the chart's foreground color. So we have that contrast. So chart.fg color. Then we want to have frame width, and we'll just use 1. Border color, same as before with the frame color. We'll make the borders the same colors as the frame, which is chart.fg color. And then we'll have border width is 1 again. We don't need to have the overlay on this one. So that should give us our table. So now we have a table element. We add it to the chart, and we go over, and we'll see, of course, there's actually nothing on the screen right now because we haven't put anything inside this table. Therefore, it's completely empty. There's nothing for it to print. Let's fix that. So diving back into the editor over here, what we need to do is create a cell. So what we are going to need to do is put tvl.cell, and that's the method for creating a cell inside of that table. And you can see all these different options for what we need to do to actually create a cell. Most of these are not necessary and they're optional. You don't have to specify it. You do need to say which column, row, and contents it's going to have though. So we want this to be on the top left corner of our table, the top left cell. And the way you do that is these are 0 based. So the first column is actually 0. The first row is also 0. So 0, 0 is your kind of origin point if you want to think of it in terms of math, graphing terms. So you put 0, 0, and then we'll just type a string. The text needs to be a string input. You can see here, type strings. And you'll type in whatever it is that you want to type in. So for now, I'm just going to put the title. And we'll leave the width and the height the way they are. We do want to specify text color though, because I've found that with these tables, if you have the wrong background color, I think text color defaults to black, and therefore if you have a black background like I do, you won't be able to see it. So the easy fix for that is just to anchor that to the chart FG color, just like we did up here for the foreground of the table itself. And that should now, when we click update, we should see on our chart now one little cell on the bottom right corner that says title in it. Let's check. We do in fact see that. Now one thing that might be a problem here in terms of the cell is you just see this is really tiny. You may not even, if you're on your phone, you may not even see it at all down here. So we can change the size of that inside of here as well. That's another parameter. So we come in here and we can see the other parameter in here would be text size. So we'll say text size equals, and then look at our options here. We have several different values that we can use. Size dot auto, and this is the default setting. And right now, auto is not working very well because it keeps it very small. So if we have huge, large, normal, tiny, small, normal will probably be a little big, but that is not a bad thing in this scenario. So let's take a look at how normal. So we've got normal is actually pretty small as well. If we do large, getting there. So let's just go all the way, and we'll make this size dot huge. That way it's easy to see while you're following along in the video. So you can see the title is pretty big now, or actually that's just as big as I can get it to go. So there's nothing else I can do here to make it more visible on the video here. So now we have our basic table is working. It is printing onto the chart. It is giving us the values that we want that we put in here. But of course, we don't want to just put the title. We want to actually put some valuable data in there, which means we need to calculate something that we can then print inside of a cell. So that first thing that we're going to need is a variable. In this case, what we're trying to populate with, we're collecting data about the stairs versus the elevator. So we want to see, is it true that green candles are basically smaller or more frequent or less frequent rather than red candles? Those would be kind of the two causes, right? If green candles are smaller than red candles, of course they're going to go up slower. Or if there are just fewer green candles, then we know that it's not going to make as much progress and will go down fast with red candles because there's more of them. So let's go ahead and start calculating that. We are going to want a size variable. So we're going to use var. That way it is not a series. It's a constant value that only changes when we change it. And we want to float because this is going to be a price. It is a decimal. And we'll call that the size of the candle. We'll initiate this to NA. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us kind of a placeholder where we can change the size and then print it down here. So in the core logic now, we want to make sure that we are updating this size only at certain times. We don't want to do it constantly. We just want to do it at the end of every candle because all we really care about is the size of the candle open to close. So the way we can do that is use if var state dot is confirmed, meaning that there are no more calculations on that bar. It is finalized. Then we can change size. We can reassign it to open minus close. And that's going to give us the difference between the opening price and the close price. And then we will put that in the cell by using string.toString. And we'll put size in there. So now what we should see, instead of just a text that says size, we're going to see the size of the most recent candle from open to close. Update it. And you can see it says negative 211.25. You can see that right now it's 3:41 p.m. So the market is still open. That means that this candle is not calculated yet. So we'll need to verify here that that is the correct size from open to close. And you can see 211.25, the numbers match. Perfect. One problem with this calculation, though, is that you'll notice it's a negative value because, of course, we are subtracting the open from the close, or we're subtracting the close from the open, rather, which on a green day means that we're getting a negative number. So we want to be able to compare apples to apples, right? We don't want to compare negative numbers to positive numbers. I just want to keep it clean. So an easy way to do that is to use a math function of the absolute value. And that is a built-in here. So you just type math and you got ABS. It's the very top option here. And we'll just enclose that in the method. And now what we're doing is we're getting the absolute value of open to close, meaning if it's a negative number, it'll convert it to a positive number. If it's a positive number, it just leaves it the way that it is. So we'll update and see that it's working, which it is. Now we have positive 211.25. So now that that is working, we want to kind of adjust our code a little bit because we don't want just the most recent green candle. We want all of the candles, and we want to be able to get some statistics on all those candles so we can see what's going on over a long period of time, not just on the most recent one. So what we need to do is to capture all of those sizes and store them. And if you follow along in the bootcamp, you would remember that we used on the grid levels indicator, we used an array to keep track of multiple different objects. And so now what we'll do is we will just convert our variable for the size. Instead of just being one value, we want to make it into an array of values. So we do that by saying array float, and we'll have to initialize that into array.new float, and that's a method. We're creating a new float, and you can see we've got our red squiggly lines. So now what is happening is we can't reassign this value. What we need to do is push that value into that array so it's stored for later. So what we're just going to do is we'll just call that sizes, right? This is plural so that we can keep in mind that this is an array. And now inside of here, instead of just saving it, we'll need to initialize a new size variable that is calculated every time that we do this, and then we'll push it into the array. So we'll call sizes our array, and we'll look at the methods. We have several different ways of adding something into the array, but push is kind of the standard. It just adds a new value at the end of the array. So in this case, we'll do push, and we pass in the size variable. And then down here, of course, we're still using the size variable, which we can't do anymore. We can, however, use a mathematical operation on that array. So we have several different statistical methods that we can do, and that includes average. So AVG stands for average. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take all the values of that array, and we're going to average them, and we're going to see what is the average size of a candle on this particular chart. So we update, and we'll see over here that on this chart, on the NASDAQ daily time frame, the average size of a candle has been 57.18 and a whole bunch of other numbers, right? So looking pretty good so far. That does look like an average, but let's verify. Now, to make sure that this average is actually counting all these bars, we can count but generally thousands of bars on a chart with the subscription level I have on TradingView. So what I want to do is peek under the hood a little bit and see how many values are used to make this, to calculate this average. So what I'm going to do is come over here into our script, and I'm going to add another cell. And I want to make sure that this cell is actually above the other cell. So I still am going to use the first column here, but I'm going to change this one to be the top one, and I'm going to move this other one down, the value. So instead of doing string.toString of sizes.average, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sizes.size. And what this does, if you look on size, it returns the number of elements in an array. So it basically counts up how many things, how many elements, how many values are inside of this array, and it's going to report that back to me. So I should see now on my chart, I should see how many candles this is using in order to create this average. I take a look, and you can see here 6,622 candles. That is how many candles are in here. So that is a lot. You know, that's a lot of days. Each one of those candles is one day, meaning that we have decades worth of data on this, which does seem accurate based on the number of bars that I get loaded on my chart. So looking good so far. So before we get too much further into data collection and analysis, I want to do a little bit of cleanup on this table to make sure that we are keeping everything nice and organized and very clear what exactly we're measuring. So if we dive back into the script a little bit, what we can do first of all is, instead of just putting string.toString and then telling the size, we can add in a little bit more context there, and we can put in a string and say samples, and then what we do is concatenate, meaning to kind of basically just merge two strings together to mash them up. So this is a string here, samples, that I typed in manually, and then I add in another string, and it kind of pushes them together into one. So if you take a look over here now on the chart, you'll see that it now says samples 6,622. We don't have any label for this one down here though. So what I want to do is prepare my table a little bit for what I want to do next. And eventually I'm going to want to separate red and green candles. So I want to have those labeled. So I'm just going to use the first column as kind of the labels for each row. So the way that I'm going to do that is to have also, I will need to make another column and name this rather than using this, I'm going to name this, right, we're using an average. So I want to put that in the next column over. So average. And then I want to make sure that this one is in that same column, right, on the next row down. So now we can see on the chart that we've got the average here, but we don't know exactly what that is. So that's what we're going to tackle next. So as it stands right now, what we're doing is we're taking every single candle and pushing it into the same array, and then we're calculating the average of everything in that array, which is not really what we want to do, right? The whole idea here is that we're looking at stairs versus elevators. We want to compare the red candles and the green candles. So what we need to do is capture those values in two separate arrays, and then we can do our calculations separately, then report them in this table separately as well. So let's get into the code. Rather than just having one array now, what we need is we need green sizes and we need red sizes so that we can store these two things separately. And then, of course, we're going to need to add in some logic to go along with that so that we know, so that the code knows where to put each of these sizes. We can't just say sizes.push because we need to know which one to put it in. So we'll need a nested if-then statement here, and we're going to say if the bar state is confirmed, right? We're gonna calculate the size, and then we need to know another condition to know which one to put it in. So if close is greater than open, meaning that we had a green day, an up day that the prices went up, then we'll do green sizes dot push size. On the other hand, if the close is less than the open, then we'll have red sizes dot push. So now what's going to happen is it's going to calculate the size and make sure that you type your variable names in correctly, which I did not just now. So now it's now it has two different arrays, and it's deciding which array to push that value into depending on whether the close was above or below the open. Now, we do have one other condition, right, where if the close is exactly equal to the open, then it wouldn't have anything to push it into, but I'm okay with losing that data because right now we're looking specifically for how do green candles and red candles compare. So on the off chance that some of these candles are actually the close and open are the exact same price, then I'm okay with losing some of that data for now. It is not really that useful to begin with. So now we see down here we've got another error, right? We have samples and it's just getting sizes.size, which doesn't exist anymore. So in order to get all the samples, we want to know the total number of samples. We need to add now green sizes.size and red sizes.size. And that should still give us the total number of samples that we've come across now. Then similar down here, we are getting another error. So we'll say green sizes average and red sizes average. That way we are now reporting both of them. Make sure that we're updating this as well. We don't want it to write to the same exact cell twice. We want to bump this down to the next row down. So now we should have 3 rows on our chart, 1 for the headers, and then these 2 reporting the actual values. And that is exactly what we see. So we've got our total samples up here. You can see that we did lose some. There were, in fact, some days that the open and close were the exact same price, and we basically threw that data out. We did not save it. Then we calculated the green days and the red days. So far, so good. So now let's do another real quick cosmetic update. Right now, we don't have any labels that tells us exactly what these 2 values are. Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. And what we're going to need to do is create another couple of cells here, one for the red and one for the green. And these are going to be in the same row, right? So the green one's here in row number 1, and the red one's in row number 2. But we do need to change to make sure that we're getting in the right column, right? We want to be in the first column, the 0 column for the label. And we will put here green and red. So now we should have labels that tells us which data belongs to which thing. So green candles here, red candles here, perfect. Now one more thing that I want to do is break down the samples by green and red, and that's pretty easy, just like we did up here. We're concatenating. So we will add string.toString, green sizes dot size, and same thing for red. We will string.toString red sizes dot size. And now we update, and we should see now as well that we've got the number of candles as well. Now it's a little bit sloppy. One more cosmetic update here to do. Instead of just putting it straight in here, I'm going to concatenate another thing in there, and I'll do. Oops. I like to use square brackets to indicate that I'm adding in kind of a sample size. You can indicate it however you like, but this is what I don't know. This is what I like to do. So square bracket. Make sure that you include your plus signs to indicate that you're going to concatenate. Otherwise, you will get an error. It won't compile. So we should be good now. Now I should see that number inside of brackets, which kind of cleans it up a little bit better. Yeah. So now we got green with the number of samples inside, red with the number of samples inside as well. And we've got the total samples up here. You can see it is actually adding up, right? So everything's looking good. Very pretty now. So one thing that we can notice here is that right off the bat, we already have a little bit of statistical insight. So you can see that red candles are fewer than green candles, meaning we get more green candles than we get red candles, almost 3,600 green candles out of this sample and only about 3,000 red ones. You can see also that the average red candle is actually bigger than the average green candle. However, averages can be misleading. If you're familiar with statistics, you can know that the weakness of averages is outliers. So if you have any information or any data points that are extremely low or extremely high, it can skew the data and give you an unclear picture of what's really going on. So usually you'll use something else in tandem with averages. Sometimes it's standard deviation. I like to use median. And the median basically is if you line up everything from lowest to highest, you look at exactly the middle price, and you can compare that to the average to get an idea based on if the median is way off from the average or vice versa, then you know that there are some outliers throwing off the data, and it's worth investigating after that. So let's go ahead and add in the median. Now, what we're going to do is we have all the same data. All we have to do is just report something else now that was not reported before, and that is the median. So let's start with adding a new heading, and we'll add this in the next column over, which is 2. And instead of average, we'll call that median. And then down here, we need to do the same thing for the green candle and the red candles. So remembering to change the column number to be appropriate. We want column number 2. Then over here, instead of calculating the average, we're going to do the median for both the red and green candles. Change column number and change to median. So now we should see on the table a new column that tells us the median as well as the average. Update, and now we see samples, we see red and green, we see the average, we see the median. And you notice that exactly what I was talking about, where the median is different from the average significantly, by double. Now, if you think about it, this actually makes a lot of sense that the average would be way off from the median because what we're doing is we're looking at the actual price difference between open and close over the course of 20 years. So 20 years ago, or more, however many, I'm not doing the calculation off the top of my head here, but decades back, the price of NASDAQ was much lower, and therefore the change in price on any given day would have been much lower as well. So you would expect that when you're averaging across so much time, that you would see a big difference between the average and the median, because the median is just going to put it in the middle versus the average, which is going to be kind of exponential, right? As the price is going higher and higher, it's changing faster and faster. So just the way we're calculating it is flawed, or at least it's not as useful as it could be. So instead of just using a raw number, a raw cost difference, what we can do is we can use a percentage difference instead, so that the percentage that it moves from open to close is what we're measuring, rather than just the absolute number of the price. And that's fairly easy to do if we come over to the code. All we really need to do here is to change this calculation here. Rather than just getting the raw number, what we can do is we can divide this by open. And so we're going to take the price change and we're going to divide it by the opening price, so we can get a percentage. What percentage did it move that day? And this is going to be a much more useful metric than what we had before. So if we update this, take a look, and now you can see that we have an average green candle that is worth about 1% of the price, which in my experience is about right. That is about what you can expect as a 1% move between open and close. Red candles, a little bit more, 1.1%. So red candles are a little bigger on average in terms of percentage. And then you got your median, where you got a median movement of about 0.7%, and red candle that's about 0.75%. So again, bigger median, bigger average, even when we switch to percentage. So this does seem to be confirming the suspicion that we do go up the stairs and down on the elevator. So now, to summarize our findings, we have come across pretty much as much data as we needed, and we have seen over the course of decades, so the sample size is plenty big to make a conclusion, and based on that conclusion, we know that there are more green candles than there are red candles, and that the average green candle is smaller than the average red candle, and the median green candle is smaller than the median red candle. So it does seem that red candles do move down more quickly than green candles do, but we see that green candles over time lead to a bias towards the upside. So now we have basically confirmed that, in fact, green candles do take the stairs and red candles do take the elevator. So I hope you enjoyed this data collection exercise and you learned something from this. I will continue to come up with more things to test. I have a lot of different interesting ideas that I like to test, and I hope you do too. If you have anything that you'd like to request or share, please go ahead and do that in the comments section, and I might take you up on it. All right, see you next time.